Welcome to the Thought Leaders video blog, where industry executives share their insights and visions in today's landscape of live entertainment.
Mike Lorenc, Head of Live Entertainment at Google. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, thanks for having me over.
Yeah, so Mike, I'm always interested. Google always shares the consumer sentiment reports. So how is that trending? How are things looking? What are you seeing?
Sure, it's a loaded question. So what we noticed recently is that the news cycle really determines the attitudes and some of the responses that we're seeing. And let's be honest, we are in a pretty tough news cycles right now.
Yeah.
With the cases being at its highest, lots of conversations and anxieties about reopening schools, and kind of ongoing social unrest that people are thinking about and dealing with, translates into not so positive responses.
Yeah,
so
right.
Bringing it to kind of to sports and live events, we started tracking in really middle of March, kind of very basic questions. How comfortable are you coming back to live events within the next 2 weeks versus next 3 months, and then what type of event? It's been fairly consistent. So we're looking at three groups of respondents. There are people, and it's about half of our respondents, about 50%, that will not come back to live events till they're confident that it's safe. So even when you reopen, they will not come. So those are the people that, many of them fall into the demographics of your typical season ticket holder. Maybe somebody older, people with families. But again, there's lots of health concerns. So the 50% kind of get off the table. Then there are people that are ready to come back now, ready to come back yesterday, ready to come back no matter what. So, but that's only about 15 to 25%, about 20% roughly.
Wow.
Which leaves about 30%. And again, it changes kind of from week over week, but around roughly 30% of who I call undecided. So those are the people that just don't know yet. And we're seeing lots of I don't know yet. You would have thought that after months right now of hearing and learning about COVID and impact, the percentage of undecided would have declined. It actually increased as we're learning more about kind of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Lately, and actually this is like the breaking news, some of the insights, we really try to survey kind of some of those undecided and try to find out more about those individuals. So I can share some of the latest data, which literally we got yesterday, and we are in the process of processing. So the first question, again, we're trying to figure out how people that have went to live events, how they spend their free time. So the question, in lieu of going to live events, how do you spend your time? And not surprisingly, most of them stream. So there's lots of people that stream lots of games and then stream videos. People that play online games, that's another ratio. And then people that have taken up some outdoor activity. So that's the hiking, biking, being active. And that follows with people that have taken up some of the indoor activities, do-it-yourself projects, or reading books, and so on and so forth. Interestingly, then we ask people two questions. One of them, post-pandemic, do you anticipate spending more or less time attending live events? And then follow-up question, do you anticipate spending more or less money on live events? Okay. We really wanted to find out. We all talk about pent-up demand. We believe that, but we wanted to quantify it. About half of the respondents for each of the questions said they'll probably spend around the same amount of time. So that's kind of like a wash. But in both cases, people that said they'll spend less time or less money outweighed the percentage of people that indicate or want to spend more time or more money. Wow. So one of the hypotheses that we have had is that, yes, there's a pent-up demand for sports. It doesn't necessarily translate into going to sports. It might be just sports content. So maybe people just miss football games without necessarily wanting to go back to a football stadium. Wow. And then when we did a cross-reference of what type of activities people are increasing their time on versus the likelihood or willingness to come back more or less frequently, people that indicated that they spend more time streaming new content and playing video games indexed heavily towards people that indicate they will spend less time and less money. Which again, the hypothesis of our consumers developing new entertainment, media consumption habits, which might dissuade them from coming back at growth, is kind of proving itself. Now, having said all of that, I actually think this is where communication and marketing comes in place. It's critical that as marketers, we continue to stay engaged with our consumers, our fans. Right now, there are different ways to do it. And then it will be equally critical not to just assume that they will come back at the same level with the same level of kind of the interest and excitement. So communicating, segmenting audiences, really staying connected. Like when I'm looking at this data, those things become very, very critical.
Wow, that's fascinating. Thanks for the insight, Mike. So,
Sure.
and you oversee, not only all live events, but also all the leagues as well. So are you seeing some interesting nuances and best practices there? And maybe as a follow-up, you mentioned pent-up demand. I know that the viewership since live sports came back on, through broadcast has gone up. But what have you seen from a best practice perspective across the leagues?
Yes, so there's definite difference between when you are in a season, when you have games versus you don't. So right now, actually soccer, Major League Soccer, and then and National Women's Soccer League, the Women Professional League, those were the first leagues that had live sports kind of televised. And we work with some of the clubs who were trying to take advantage of the fact that they were the only game in town and try to either drive tune in to make people aware that they can watch some of the soccer games, or just engage with their fans that were interested. Baseball, we're seeing something similar right now. So with baseball, it is again making people aware, engaging with fans, and using the actual footage or content of the games that are happening. Now, when you are basketball and hockey, you are on the brink of having games. Yep. So lots of it is kind of the preseason, build the pent up excitement, and maybe creating some of the storylines about the either the revenge or continuing the streak, or this is our chance. But again, kind of like and using mostly social media for that. Football is a little different. Again, football, we live on it kind of 24/7. It is a category that's very sensitive to what's happening. So, the unknown. Like literally, I know we're recording it today. I just read the news about Ohio State, which kind of announced the season tickets being pushed to next season. So there's lots of non-sports content around football that kind of really the narrative is more about will it happen, how will it happen, what will the capacity be, are players healthy or not. But again, there's opportunity to engage with those fans. And then on the business side, we are seeing, and frankly more so on a professional than college athletics, and more of a desire to pursue the diversified revenue streams. So specifically here, I'm talking about merchandising. So again, there are clubs that are leaning in and try to sell merchandising, and it might be anything from selling jerseys or selling or putting the giveaways, the bobbleheads kind of on the market, just doing anything to generate revenue, to selling commemorative bricks, or even like PSLs for the new stadiums that you can think about. Right. So that's one of the aspects. Another one is sponsorship activation. So if you had already maybe made some of the commitments towards the sponsors around website traffic. So many people anticipated and sold basically the traffic on their website based on assumptions from previous season. So if you're really short on that, we are working with some of the clubs to try to drive up interest and drive up eyeballs or traffic to kind of the co-branded content that they have. And then, of course, everybody wants to kind of figure out exactly what is the data, kind of what I'm hearing right now, the theme is how do we make it a 2020 problem rather than an ongoing issue that maybe will linger for 2 or 3 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah, for sure. There's definitely the concern of the multi-year impact of the pandemic.
Yep.
So this is a nice dovetail into what you were just framing up, looking at other opportunities to generate revenue. So, this year everyone's going to be faced with limited capacity and limited number of tickets to sell, but there almost could be an unlimited opportunity for donations and to engage new donors. So how do you see this potentially playing out, and what could some of our community members do to lean into donor campaigns with digital marketing?
Yeah, so actually in here, I'll start kind of even outside of the entertainment business. So we as Google have seen lots of success, both on a political field, kind of from the political fundraising, but also just the broad fundraising. So, when you think of the St. Jude's of the world, the American Cancer Society, the AARPs, the in-person fundraising has disappeared. So many of those organizations are really leaning into the digital platforms to drive lots of fundraising.
Right.
And yeah, we're seeing it also with, in our space. So when you talk about performing arts organizations, or talk about some of the nonprofits, there is opportunity to stay engaged with your fans, your former donors, your future donors in college athletics, your alumni network, your fan network, and yes, try to lean in on more of a kind of retail versus kind of versus a big fundraising. So yeah, I don't think it's realistic to try to get somebody to donate $500,000, $1 million with a one click, but you could reach out to millions of your fans, and with the right messaging, they might be interested in helping to support organization. Especially now, people understand that football has generated and funded so many of the smaller sports, and people understand that all of the universities are dealing with significant revenue shortages. So that definitely is an opportunity there.
Yeah, for sure. And it feels like there's a lot of transparency too, right? And what the impact is to the institution and communicating that like I've never seen before. So that's really interesting. It's also interesting to see a lot of just the student athlete stories and what they're going through and how they're, coming back to campus and what they're doing to become a big time student athlete. So those are interesting anecdotal narratives as well. So you talked a little bit about ongoing engagement. What recommendations do you have for ongoing engagement when there's likely going to be people that want to come to games that can't get tickets this year?
Yes, and I think that's the challenging part, and that's why and we've seen on the professional side and right now with colleges, the number one issue is usually kind of on average you have sold more season tickets that you will have capacity for this season,
right?
And that's kind of that's an interesting problem to have, but it's a real problem. So think about reseating the people, or like in the NFL. So NFL not only has limited capacity, but also they're reserving the bottom 8 rows. So they're not selling those seats, and they will be using that space for local TV ads.
Wow.
Well, where do you reseat the 50-yard bottom 3 or 4 row kind of people? Those were the people, either your most valued partners, maybe kind of sponsors, or people that have kind of gotten over time to better and better seats. Realistically, you might have to put them in a section 300, or like the 25-yard line seat. So that's kind of one thing that you have to manage. Kind of how do you manage the expectations? How do you ensure that people that want to come in have the opportunity to come in, understanding that you won't be able most likely to fit in everybody? And then I think follow-up question is, how do you build new fan bases if you don't have enough capacity to kind of to drive that? Right. And then additional question is everything around the game itself. So especially in college athletics, tailgating. A meeting with friends, a meeting with another alums, coming to homecoming games. There is such a huge part of the pre and post game panache, if you will, that it will most likely disappear as well because of the limitations or complete inability of doing that. So I think that's kind of one of the questions where, and it's probably a very unpopular opinion, but maybe college athletics is better with playing with no fans versus only limited number of fans. So again, I think one of the no, but I think that's one of the questions to ask. So what I'm hearing is people are starting to ask lots of those questions.
Yeah.
And in a way, nothing's off the table. So starting to have kind of some of those conversations, I think it's very, very important. And then again, the follow-up is, of the season ticket holders that have been coming to all of the games, all of the home games, if they spend this season watching the games on TV, I think again, it's a false positive narrative to assume that the renewal rate for the 21-22 season will be at 100%. I think we have to be prepared that some of those people might choose to, again, not to completely abandon going to games, but maybe might choose not to renew their season ticket holder and maybe choose to go to 1 or 2 games, or kind of select games. So I think that's another thing. The whole notion of season tickets or packages might start becoming kind of less relevant. And I know I'm piling on. Another thing, which again consumers are learning right now, the refunds of tickets are becoming very critical. So all sales a final approach. are really preventing people from committing to buying tickets for events which they don't know if will happen. So I think, again, with the refunds and ability to either resell the ticket or get a full value of the ticket will be another consideration which historically our fans didn't bother with. It wasn't really an issue, what will happen to my money if the game doesn't happen. It was more of an issue, what will happen to my ticket if I can't come to a game.
Yeah, great point. The rollover seems like the big trend now, rolling over to next season or roll over to a donation. So yeah, those are great points. So Mike, is there a pervasive challenge or issue that you've seen that people should stop doing right away? Is there a trap or a pitfall that they fall into that they should course correct?
Well, nobody's doing it right now, but I think it's very important. So I used one of the presentations on PACnet, and kind of it was the wave now, hug later theme.
Yes.
And that was like a street art that I saw like in chalk in my neighborhood. And I think the biggest mistake would be right now to try to hard sell somebody. So this is the let's wave, let's connect, let's make sure that we are staying in contact, but let's not hug right now. Some people are not comfortable with hugging. So the hard sell of you have to renew, you have the 12 hours left, anything that maybe had worked in the past probably will backfire. Yeah. I think that's one aspect. Another one is don't assume that you know what the concerns are. What we're noticing, with the reopening, it's a very regional approach, and every university, every state deals differently with that. University of Michigan, I came from Ann Arbor, has a huge medical complex. So it's very important that the athletic department is kind of in lockstep from the messaging perspective with the hospitals. So really understanding some of the nuances on a geography should allow you to have kind of the custom messages. And then listen. So we know that most people expect certain changes to happen at venues themselves. I think really understanding, doing survey, asking kind of the fan bases exactly what they expect can help tailor the message so you don't come off as being a tone deaf or too all assuming in your messaging.
Yeah, great point. We've seen lots of schools do some of the survey work and tailor some of the responses based on concerns. So that's a great point, Mike. So let's talk a little bit about innovation. Paciolan right now, we're leaning into mobile ticketing and data, and this is the time to innovate, I think. So what recommendations do you have for organizations that are looking to both survive and thrive, if that's possible, during the pandemic?
Yeah, no, great point. So yes, mobile is becoming almost a health issue. So again, the old notion of handing off your ticket, your printed out PDF or a ticket to an usher who then scans it, gives it back to you. People everything goes into a contactless. So you think about the food delivery that we're experiencing right now, or even going to restaurants where you scan a barcode and you have a menu that way. So the mobile experience when it comes to ticket redemption will become the new norm, 100%. And that will be the expectation for many people. So I think investing in mobile on the back end, on the front end is a critical component. Another thing that you mentioned, it's data. Right now having a communication strategy and leveraging social media or earned media to continue engagement with fans allows you to build out databases and really understand who your fans are, segmenting them the right way. So when you're ready to reopen, you market efficiently. So leveraging data, collecting data and segmenting will allow the venues, will allow the athletic departments to market to the right people. So here the idea would be even for the fundraising. If you understand who your former donors were, you can come up with 2 or 3 unique messages. And then you can using video, using banner, using search ads, you can message to your former donors of 2,500 plus differently than your alumni base that never donated money. So again, collecting and segmenting data is very, very critical. And then another one is thinking of diversifying your revenue stream. So again, if you rely only on the foot traffic, on tickets, you are in big trouble. That's why pro leagues are doing a little better because they're more diversified, or the bigger institutions doing better than smaller ones. If you can still generate revenue through sponsorship, merchandising, through media rights, through some other means that don't rely on having people inside your arena, you will be better off and you'll buy yourself some more time.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So thinking about innovation and Google, obviously that's the hallmark of Google. You're innovative and you're always looking at innovation and Google 10x thinking. So are there things that you're seeing now that perhaps are innovative and people are thinking differently that you think will persist or maybe fundamentally change the game after the pandemic?
That's again a great question. Yeah, so we hear a lot that the past 3-4 months kind of generated 3-4 years or even 10 years of change consumer behavior. Mm-hmm. So on a macro level, actually I'll start with so Google this week we announced that we will have the optional work from home till July 2021.
Wow.
I think that will be one of the trends. One of the trends will be that you will see more, and it's easier for media or tech kind of companies to do it, but you'll see more companies and more people working from home, working remotely. So I think that's kind of on the macro level. That's one of the changes.
Wow.
The direct impact it might have on college athletics. For college athletics, local radio and billboards historically have been a huge way of marketing to your local constituents. Well, if fewer people commute to and from work, the effectiveness of those two channels will probably decrease. So that's kind of the first aspect.
Makes sense.
We are seeing big increases in e-commerce and overall delivery. So again, think of the restaurants business. Like you can get pretty much everything delivered to your home. So e-commerce continues to grow. Even people that maybe hesitated or didn't want to kind of partake that much in it right now are accepting. Again, news from this weekend, early this week, Walmart, Target, a couple other retailers announcing they will not have their stores open for Thanksgiving Thursday, or they will not have Black Friday because they worry about too many crowds of people coming in. They will have online events. They'll have Cyber Monday. So again, they'll be pushing people to e-commerce. So e-commerce is important for college athletics. Again, historically, our websites and our mobile usage was not at par with the best-in-class travel or retail or e-commerce sites. Mm-hmm. But I think the expectation will be that we'll have to step up kind of the usability because people will be used to that.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yep, and then the last thing, again, it is people are. When you think of the TV consumption, especially, so the cord cutters, which are because sports is a big part. So everybody right now is watching way more TV, but it's not your broadcast TV. So it's the Disney Plus, it's Netflix, it's Quibi, it's Peacock, it's HBO. So people are investing and spending lots of kind of OTT, which will mean that the linear TV, the broadcast, and potentially cable TV viewership will decline outside of sports. And I think the question is, when you have such a saturation of sports, where potentially this fall every league will have multiple games per day at the same time, what I'm curious about is to see whether the viewership of sports on TV will have as big of a bump as I think we all hope for, anticipate, or whether it will be kind of distributed among so many games, so many sports, that on an apples to apples comparison actually will be flat.
Wow, interesting. I'm also a YouTube TV subscriber, so thank you for having the Big Ten Network on there. So I appreciate that.
There you go, of course.
No, it's good, especially with live sports being back on. It's
Yeah.
great to watch, great coverage. So Mike, fast forward after the pandemic, and you could go to any live event you want to in the world. What would it be and why?
Oh my gosh, so many, right? We're all thinking about like what will happen. So actually, I will start with. Somebody has asked me this question. So I have a 17, almost 18-year-old who is an incoming senior in high school. He's a football player. Great. I really hope I get to see him play this fall. I don't know if it will happen, but so it's not even post-pandemic. But I would give up a Super Bowl tickets for a chance to watch a high schooler play a couple games.
I love it.
I know it's crazy, but again, I think that's kind of the emotional connection when it comes to like a bigger events. Yeah. I was actually supposed to this past month be in Europe for the Euro 2020 soccer game. Take me to a World Cup final game. I would love to do it.
Awesome. Well, good luck with your son getting on the football field out there.
We'll see, right?
We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. It's going to be a crazy rest of the summer going into the fall. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your partnership. It's always a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for joining the Thought Leaders video blog. And remember, everyone can step up and be a leader in their own way. We look forward to seeing you next time.